Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 26, 2012 Board of Directors regular meeting for Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We have our Metro Cable announcement. The open session meeting is videotaped for cablecast on Metro Cable 14. Replay on Saturday, July 28th at 1 p.m. and Monday, July 30th at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. Webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. And the open session meetings are also available for viewing on the district website at www.metrofire.ca.gov. We now have the public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within district jurisdiction, including items on or not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any speaker cards?
No, we don't.
All right, thank you. Moving on, Chair will entertain a motion for consent agenda, please.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Director Monk.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Barzali.
Aye.
Newcomer.
Aye.
Scheidegger.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Pearson absent. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. Chief, did you have something you wanted to mention? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to action items. Our first one is fiscal year 2012-2013 final budget. Chief Financial Officer McFarland, welcome to the podium.
Thank you very much. As you all remember, at our last meeting, we did a very extensive presentation on our preliminary budget. And under state law, we are required to make it available to the public before we finalize it, which we did both on our website, and we published it and had it available in our lobby. We had just a few adjustments since the preliminary budget. We were given a new number for our dispatch services, which was about $277,000 higher than what we were expecting that they had told us previously. So we increased the budget for that amount. From what I understand from Chief Cockrum that sits on the board is that's kind of a worst case number, and it's likely that that number could come down since a lot of it had to do with the level of the reserves that they were having established this year, which is still under debate, as well as what the prior year carryovers were, which were less this year. So that was one change. In addition, we had some 11-12 costs having to do with CalPERS that was carried over from last year to this year. So we rebudgeted that, and when we amended the budget to include an additional $1,343,000, it ended up being $253,000 short. And so the county only paid up to the amount that was our budget for our labor category, and then the remaining amount was paid out of the current year and had to be added to the budget. So it's more of deferred benefit costs from the prior year. And so in addition, I updated some property tax numbers, and the net effect of the revenue changes and the expenditure changes was an additional $169,000 net. We also did a few changes having to do with our non-divisional budget, where I could identify something that was more properly placed in a division budget. I did so, and so we had some reclassifications. We also had to rebudget $500,000, which was a transfer that the board authorized as part of the mid-year budget last year, and although the requests were made to the county, it was never executed, so the easiest way for us to handle that was just to rebudget it. So, and that's the end of my report. Unless you have any questions, you should have received your updated final budget. And we also gave you some estimates of where we think we're going to end up for the year. And We're thinking for 12, we're going to be at a reserve ratio of about 12.6%, comparing our reserves to our operating budget, and then with the forecast for 10.7% for June 30th, 2013, and that reduction has to do with implementing our new single role paramedic program, which in total has a $1.6 million impact, $500,000 coming from that one transfer, and the other $1.1 million from the existing reserves at the beginning of the year.
There are comments, questions? Director Newcomer?
The increase in the dispatch fee and the PERS adjustment or correction, are those reflected in the 212A objects 10 and 20? Are those the two big changes, the big differences that I see?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Grant Gould?
Ma'am, thank you very much for the update. You say that the 276,956 out of dispatch you believe is set a little high and that they're telling you it could come in lower?
We actually received an invoice, and that was the first I knew that they had upped it. And then, but they are still in the process of closing their books for fiscal year 2012. So depending on how that comes out, it could end up reducing the amount that we have to pay on our second invoice, since they bill us 2 times during the fiscal year.
And this $250,000 came as a surprise increase?
It did to me. I had an email indicating that there would be no change in the amount, so we rebudgeted the same amount as the prior year. And I guess as they got closer to putting together their preliminary budget, that amount went up. So I will definitely reconfirm next year a number of times to make sure I'm not surprised again.
But if I can address that, I think I can clarify that directly and to the point. The dispatch center back in April sent us an email, I believe it was April, that said this is what your cost is going to be. And then they continued going through their budget. And what happens at the dispatch center is that they always fully fund for a fully staffed dispatch center in their labor costs. Very rarely do they have a fully staffed dispatch center. So what ends up happening is you end up with a credit at the end of the year that should come back. First off, several issues affected us as they were winding it down. One is that we had more call volume that we had to pay for because our call volume went up by almost 2,000 runs, if you remember last year. The second issue is that the amount of staff positions, in other words, that rollover was smaller than what they thought it was going to be, and they're still working on those numbers. And the third issue is that they elected to establish an 8% general fund reserve, and so that was about an additional $113,000 to both us and to the city of Sacramento. The problem with that is that they failed to notify us of that, number one. And number two, because of the transition that's been taking place, because of the retirements of Chief Aaron and everything, there was miscommunication. We weren't advised at finances level. And my last words on that is this, is that though that is a noble endeavor, we have a 10.7% general fund reserve. To be at 8, I certainly would like to have weighed in on that issue before I put our $113,000 in their account to hold on to it. So that has been relayed through Chief Cockrum, and he talked to the accountant, and so did Rhonda over at the dispatch center. Overall, they think the numbers could even be smaller, so we won't have as big of impact. But that, in a nutshell, is how we got to where we are. They gave us a number in April, and it changed between April and when we did our final budget, and they decided to increase their reserve to about 8%.
Thank you, Chief.
And I'll bring it back to the Finance Committee. When they do their final budget, which may not be till the fall, I will at that point know what their ending numbers were, how much our actual credit was, if they do indeed stick with the 8% reserve, and be able to provide that information to the Finance Committee.
And one last thing on that, if I may. As we have gone in and redesigned the finance division at Metro, We have now started the redesign on the finance division over at the training JPA and said no longer is it going to be acceptable to have this 20-second report on what the final deal is. We now, under Chief Cockram's guidance, are going to be changing the finance division over at the dispatch center and modernizing it so that we get more accurate and detailed reports in a more standardized accounting. So that's the other issue that we're doing. One bite at a time at the apple, and we're picking them off one at a time.
And I'll just recap that our total budget, including all funds, is $166.4 million, of which $148.4 million is our general fund, and we have a number of resolutions that we need the board to adopt to finalize the final budget.
Right, thank you. Any other questions or comments for CFO McFarland? All right.
I just want to add one thing, President
Chief.
Jones, if I can, because I think it's important that the public gets this very, very clearly. We have a balanced budget this year. That's with the loss of over $4 million in property tax, which puts us up to around $26 million on an annualized basis that we've lost. We have closed companies. Labor has come in and saved us $10 million on an annualized basis in concessions that they were under no obligation to make, and they agreed to do that. So they deserve a huge kudos for that. The public is paid because we've had to cut and close 6 stations or 6 companies that we've had to do. And through all of that, we've got a 10.7% general fund reserve. Moody's recommends a 5% general fund reserve. So that's through our conservative approach that the board has directed us to do while trying to maintain those service levels as best we can. The dipping of the $1.6 million in the general fund reserve in this year's budget, so the public understands that, is we are borrowing from that reserve for one-time money to start up a new program that will better service the community, and that's a single-role paramedic program. That program, through cost recovery, will generate about $2.9 to $3 million a year, and we will pay the general fund, footnoted, pay that general fund loan back into that reserve. So truly, if we weren't starting this new innovative program that I think is cutting edge for our district and our citizens, we wouldn't even be dipping into the reserve. But that's what the reserve is for, is those one-time shots that you need to start something up. But we are paying it back, and I think it's important. If you look around the jurisdictions around us, people would be hard-pressed to say that they have a better structural balanced budget than we do. We put a lot of work at the board's direction and staff's direction in the finance division. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Lots of work, incredible amounts of work represented there. Thank you. Right. The Chair will entertain a motion for Resolution 1A.
So moved.
Second.
First and seconded. Please call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Director Monk.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Barzali. Newcomer.
Aye.
Scheidegger.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Pearson absent. Motion passes.
I'll entertain a motion for Resolution 1B.
Second.
Right. Well, let me go ahead and read it out since, thank you for the quick response, fellow directors. Resolution 2012, final budget for Capital Facilities Fund 212D. Please call the roll.
Director Monk.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Barzali.
Aye.
Newcomer.
Aye.
Scheidegger.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones. Pearson absent. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, could I make a motion for Resolution 1C, the 2012-2013 final budget for other post-employment benefits, Fund 212F?
Second.
First and seconded. Please call the roll.
Director Monk.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Barzali.
Aye.
Newcomer.
Aye.
Scheidegger.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Pearson absent. Motion passes.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to make a motion on Resolution 1D, the 2012-2013 final budget for Grants Fund 212G.
Second.
Seconded. Please call the roll.
Director Monk.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Barzali.
Aye.
Newcomer.
Aye.
Scheidegger.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones. Pearson absent. Motion passes.
And Madam Chair, if it would please the board, I will make a motion for Resolution 1E, the 2012-2013 final budget for leased facilities fund 212L.
First and seconded, please call the roll.
Was that second Director Scheidegger?
Director
Clark,
Clark.
thank you. Director Monk.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Barzali.
Aye.
Newcomer.
Aye.
Scheidegger.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Pearson absent. Motion passes.
And Madam Chair, if I may, Resolution 1F, 2012-2013, final budget for simulator grant fund 212S, I move.
First and seconded, please call the roll.
Director Monk.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Barzali.
Aye.
Newcomer.
Aye.
Scheidegger.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones. Pearson absent. Motion passes.
And finally, Madam Chair, item 1G, I motion the resolution to adopt the 2012-2013 appropriations limit schedule.
First and seconded, please call the roll.
Director Monk.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Barzali.
Aye.
Newcomer.
Aye.
Scheidegger.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Pearson absent. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. McFarland. All right, moving on to action item number 2, bid award for perimeter fencing and gate at the Metro Fire Training Center, 3801 Zinfandel
Have that
Drive in
conversation.
Rancho Cordova. And we have Deputy Chief Scott Cochran. Welcome to the podium.
President Jones, Director, Scott Cocker, I'm Deputy Chief of Support Services. Today I'm here to present the staff report for board approval on the installation of a perimeter gate and fence at our training property at Zinfandel. On June 8, 2012, the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District released a request for formal bid for all inclusive material, labor, and installation for a perimeter fence and gate at our new training facility. The RFFB was posted to the district website from June 8, 2012 to July 9, 2012. A notification was published in the Sacramento Bee on July 12, 2012, and again on June 17, 2012. Information regarding the posting of the bids was also sent to surrounding building exchanges. Interested parties were requested or required to submit their bids to the board clerk no later than June 9, 2012. Two companies, Roblin Construction, along with White Knight Fence Company, submitted sealed bids for the project. The bids were open in a public forum, and their quotes were as follows. Roblin bid $287,395, and White Knight $506,000. This project was a joint venture between the joint powers. We have in our audience from the Cali MA was part of that, and through the training through Metro Fire. Actually, the way we did it was there was a percentage that was developed per linear foot based on the space that we occupied versus what the JPA occupied. The joint powers in a previous agreement and discussion agreed to pay $138,000 from the total cost of the district responsibility, and the district will pay any costs exceeding the $138,000. The cost of the gate and the fence has been allocated in 2012 and 13 budget, and staff respectfully request that the board award the bid to Roblin Construction in the amount of $287,395. And just for information for the board, the Roblin Construction is also one of the 6 vendors that we approved as a CMAR vendor and is a well-known, well-respected contractor, general contractor in our community. Thank you.
Very much. It's been moved. Do I hear a second?
I have a question.
Okay, well, we can
Right, we
also
can
move
do
in
that.
second and
Yeah, yeah.
continue discussion.
Second.
Yes, sir.
Moved and seconded, continue discussion. Director Scheidegger?
Chief,
Yes.
I was just really intrigued by the difference in bids. Are we sure that they're similar materials, similar?
I was assured, we have a project manager for this, Tom Perkins, who's also a general contractor and a well-respected builder in our community. I was assured by him that he went through this line by line and that he's not only believes that this is comparable to each one, but will oversee the project and ensure that that's the case. I did provide each of you a rendering of what the fence will look like along with the board clerk, and it's a pretty nice looking There's a couple of responsibilities we have, which is to get power out there and some signage. But past that, he assures me that he's been through it line by line and feels comfortable that that is an equitable bid.
All right, thank you.
And these were the only, oh, thank you, Madam Chair. These were the only two bidders.
So we had 7 companies that expressed an interest, we believe, and that 5 of those were actually fence builders. However, part of the requirement of our bid was that they either collaborate and work with a general contractor or be a general contractor because of the additional workload of the masonry and the electrical and some of that work. So we believe that some of that, some of them realized that they didn't have either the general contractor license or they couldn't find a general who wanted to team up with them and participate in it.
Also, is this White Knights Fence Company, are they local?
I believe the answer to that is yes. I believe they're a vendor that we use presently. I don't know if Mark Jones is here, but I believe that they are a vendor that we use for some of our other fencing that we have had.
Okay. Yeah, it's just really, man, somebody's leaving a lot of money on the table or something. Well, anyway, it's
A wide
it's
variance.
hard to
That
believe
happens
it's almost half.
time to time.
Yeah. In these times. But good
Roland is
job.
a vendor that I think would like to do some future work with us, and
Right.
hopefully they'll go out there and do a good job. I don't suspect that they won't, knowing that there's some other work on the table down the road
Right.
for some other companies.
Okay, because we appreciate the low bid, but sometimes it just unnerves you when you see it's that low. So that was my concern.
Thank you, Director Clark. Any other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion and it's been seconded. Would you please call the roll?
Director Monk.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Barzali.
Aye.
Newcomer.
Aye.
Scheidegger.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Pearson absent. Motion passes.
Thank you very much, Chief. We move on to presentation items, and we have one item. Citygate Associates Incorporated, 5-year Standards of Coverage Update. We have Deputy Chief Chris Holbrook and Mr. Stuart Gary. Welcome to the podium, gentlemen.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Christopher Holbrook, Deputy Chief of Operations. I'm going to actually move right into introduction of Mr. Gary and let him work through his presentation, at which time we'll take questions and comments at the conclusion of that. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Stuart Gary of Citygate and Associates.
And the mouse pointer is?
Right there. You just look at him and he'll click it.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. It's always a pleasure to be back and be of service once again to the district. I'd like to start this discussion before we get into the granularity of response times, where response times fit in the current economic service construct that the whole country and all of my clients face. And this is especially beneficial if members of the media here, the public, somebody sees this, if you're webcasting it. What is the context within which to have this discussion? And let's start with the fact in America, home of the free, land of the brave, don't tread on me, there are no federal or state minimum standards for the level of fire services response times. There are none. This is a local control issue for local elected officials to look at risks, desired outcomes, and to have, hopefully, the appropriate revenues to mitigate those risks and deliver the acceptable outcomes. So, but the feds and the state, in its infinite wisdom, have said, if you're going to provide fire service at all, do so safely. And the cost of safety is immense in our equipment, our protective clothing, the breathing equipment, the training standards, et cetera, et cetera. You all know that. The disconnect nowadays is thus communities have the level of fire services that they need and can afford, but the challenge is matching need with fiscal capacity. I think I have but one client the last 3 years who's been comfortable with the available capacity to the revenue. It just doesn't exist right now in this economy. So agencies have a gap of revenue to services, and you've certainly dealt with it. When we did the first deployment study, the only way to maintain cash flows was to close fire crews, and that was a tool of last resort. You were into the recession earlier and harder than other of my clients.
let me tell you, I could rattle off the names of clients that have done now what you had to do early on, which is brown out or permanently close fire companies or stations to keep their structural deficit from becoming so bad as to go out of business. So I'd like to commend the district for this discussion we're about to get into, which is to keep your analysis fresh, understand your response times, and the response times may not be what you or certain neighborhoods prefer, but you're actually doing a pretty credible job with some fairly thin resources and spots. But this district came into the recession short fire stations due to growth patterns and historic legacy decisions made over 50 years. Well, you can't fix that in 1 or 2 years, and as I go through the numbers, that will become apparent. And you're actually not as far behind as other clients, and I'll cite one recent example, a study we did last year for the city of San Diego. City of San Diego entered the recession short 19 fire stations. And by almost any objective measure, 10 of those need to be built, and with adaptive response technologies, we could fix the other 9 on a peak hour part-time basis. 10 whole first due fire districts short. So as you look at your numbers, Stockton's driven its deployment back to the late 1970s, early 80s level. So I just wanted to put that in context. So let's talk about your travel time performance to serious incidents over this multi-year period has decayed. We'll talk about why. The district is deficient in meeting its adopted policy goals. So that's the gap analysis. You set a best practices, outcome-driven policy goal, and can the current deployment system meet that goal? No. The district's adopted goal for the first due unit is to reach a incident 90% of the time within 4 minutes driving time, 4 minutes travel time. We won't talk about total reflex time tonight, which includes crew getting prepared, turnout time, or the dispatch alarm office processing time. Just pure driving time, once we hit the pavement, wheels rolling. Your goal is 4 minutes, 90%. So how have you been doing to that first due unit goal from 2007? You started at 64%, and that slowly decayed 63, 60 to 59%. Give or take, you're losing about 1% a year. I don't believe, I can't prove it mathematically for what I'm about to say, but I would believe that the decay at this point will stabilize. In other words, you're not going to go 1% a year to 0. Well, what drives decaying performance? I'll talk in a couple of slides. It's not just the closed brownout stations. You got a little bit of fortune performance where we closed the stations. I say I was part of that analysis. What's happening is simultaneous calls for service and total calls per year are high enough that at certain peak hours of the day, you just start to run out of units in certain population clusters. And when that happens, somebody is going to get a longer travel time. And if calls for service were to go, sure, for 30 years, district-wide, your performance will go down. But when you look at performance by fire company area, by fire station, some of your most populated areas where you have well-placed stations still have very good response times. So that statistic I showed you a slide ago was your district-wide performance, which is averaging a lot of first due fire company areas. Over the 5 years of this study, having said that, no one fire station met the 90% 4-minute drive time goal. You have a few knocking on the door of that goal, but no one met it. In 2011, to 90% of the serious incidents, the 90 percentile time was 6 minutes and 15 seconds. This is due for the following reasons. Not enough fire stations to cover the geography, which was further compounded by the closure now of a total of 3 companies. an increase in the total volume of calls and the ongoing rate of simultaneous incidents, that's incidents that occur at the same time. And if that's from Rancho Cordova, clear down at Arden Fair, not much of an impact. You get 3 at once in Rancho Cordova, it has a significant impact on response times in this battalion. Given a district-wide simultaneous rate, however, of about 4 calls at once, some of the battalions do have trouble covering simultaneous incidents at peak hours of the day. Any peak hour ambulance and move and cover programs in dispatch, which you have, do cover that headache, but they can't completely erase it. So how does this look over time in terms of total deficiency? The goal was 4 minutes. It's decayed to 59% today. That's 5% over the years of the study. If you were to ask mathematically what deficiency are we to the goal, if you wanted to talk in statistical terms, you're 31% deficient, 59 to 90%. Well, what's that really mean? And I think here's the conversation to have with the public as this district and this local market area economy starts to come out of the recession. In 2011, your response times were off of the district goal 19,000 times. 19,000 incidents did not get a 4-minute first due fire unit. That's 41% of all calls for service, and it occurs an average of 52 times a day or twice per hour. So said very succinctly, twice per hour, 24/7, 365, there is an inadequate response time event occurring. Now, we could further statistically break down those 19,000. Some of them were Johnny falling off the skateboard. Some of them were a full cardiac arrest. Others were minor fires. Others were serious fires. But the problem with the deployment system is it's much like buying life insurance at home. You have to space your fire trucks across the communities as a life insurance net. You never know where the next call will be. This isn't like Safeway at 5 o'clock on Friday night when I can predict on 50 weeks of experience how many checkout lines to have because I've got this highly predictable flow that always happens at 5 o'clock Friday night. I can tell you where you had many emergencies last year, but that can vary a little bit year to year. I will tell you that population density drives total emergencies, so the more people per square mile, especially EMS events, but also small fires, the more events you have. And your challenge going forward, as is all my clients, is do we want to spread the fire trucks out equally to every neighborhood, or at least at peak hours of the day, do we want to concentrate some of those units? Because we know we will have calls for service at Arden Fair in the afternoon. And that means an outer neighborhood maybe gets a 7 or 8 minute response time for a few hours of a day because we've moved units to where we know we're going to have 20 calls an hour. And is it in pure triage sense, do you want to do the most good for the most calls, or do you want to do the most good for the geography? Right now, with your current number of fire stations and street network, you cannot have it both ways. Cover the geography, cover the calls. Many of us, my professional recommendation is you cover the calls for service because at least you have a somewhat predictable pattern of prior emergency occurrence to plan on. Next, please. The district standard for first alarms to a serious building technical rescue event is 8 minutes travel time for the 3 engines, a ladder truck, a chief officer. In 2011, for the engines in the truck, the 90 percentile time was actually 10 minutes and 40 seconds, so you're 240 long for travel. By minute 8, 75% of the structure fires received the effective response force, so the first alarm. Now you have to look at outcomes. As you consider that, well, what about 25% of the building fires that didn't get it? You almost have to analyze every occurrence. Some of those building fires were handled by 2 units. Some of those building fires went to greater alarm. Was the total building fire loss in dollars or property or jobs excessive? In our climate, in sprinklered buildings, with even a 10-minute first alarm time, if you stand back and look at outcomes, most of those building fires did not go to greater alarms, and none went to conflagration. So you do have some ability to keep the fire to the building of origin. Your goal is to keep it to the room of origin and to have most of the contents saved in the personal possessions. Sometimes, if not enough units get there quickly enough, you can't deliver that optimum customer service, which is to keep the fire to the room of origin. You're keeping it to the building of origin. Next, please. This is a three-dimensional model that says a lot of different things. For tonight, I show this, that this is small square mile areas by call volume, statistical performance, green being better than red. But the reason I show you this 3D model is for you to understand the wide diversity of workload per square area that you have in the district. So the height of those bars is many-fold the workload that somebody with a neighborhood where the bar is not even showing any height at all. So this is where we get back to planning deployment for the bulk of the calls for service versus an even geography coverage footprint. Next, please. The geographic mapping model that we've used over the years for the district studies would calculate that 4-minute driving time for the neighborhood-based unit covers 70% rounded off of 1,414 road miles that serve areas of greater than 1,000 per square mile. So 70% of the more highly populated areas are within mathematical reach of an existing fire crew at 4 minutes drive time. So 30% are not. Many of those are in the less rural, emerging suburban, less populated areas. And then we take the computer tools and say, well, if you wanted to increase that coverage, what would it take? So let's keep going. Let's talk about also the station closure impacts. As you know, some of you know, we went into the brownout study with a variety of criteria and said, where could you reduce services and do the least damage to customer service? And then you went out and had community conversations and made the closures. In retrospective analysis now, the closure of Station 68 affected less than 3% of the incidents in the immediate area, which included 68, 66, and 58. That closure added about 90 seconds to travel time compliance for the first due unit. So you have to, at the first blush, say, well, what gets dramatically worse in only 90 seconds? Second apparatus arrivals were relatively unaffected, while third and fourth arrivals were more dramatically affected, because now that local unit couldn't get there, if fifth or sixth due was busy, fourth due is covering too big an area and is off base to come get to where 68's was closed. Next. The first due apparatus travel time for engine 106 actually dropped slightly. It's a mathematical quirk. You closed it, response time slightly improved. Why? Simultaneous calls, locational calls. That engine does so many calls in a very close snapshot just before to just after the closure. As luck would have it, incidents happened closer to existing units that were left open. It also shows, though, with a proper deployment plan, how closely spaced fire stations can absorb customer service and keep it up even when 1 or 2 units are out of service on other incidents, training status, community affairs, etc. In 106's area, second due performance decreased by 12 seconds, again a mathematical oddity. So from a mathematical viewpoint, the closure of engine 106 had little measurable impact on demand or performance. Next. Summarized this way, the closure of a single resource out at Station 68 had a comparatively dramatic effect on a very small number of calls, most of which were not tragic to begin with. They were typically a more normal day in and day out, modest event. I realize they're tragic to the party involved, but to the entire system, they're a routine event to handle. But the closure of 106 had little effect on a great number of incidents because there was enough of a supporting cast of resources around 106 to absorb the additional workload. Therefore, geographic distribution, spacing of stations, continues to be the most single important aspect affecting your travel time performance measures. In order to meet your goals long term, a minimum today, without new growth, 5 additional fire stations, 5 additional engines. You have gaps in the deployment modeling in the road network that deserve filling. A minimum of 2 additional ladder trucks, in addition to the 2 just added in February of this year with the grant staffing. A minimum of 2 additional battalion chiefs. Then when near-term growth happens, if it happens, when it happens, an additional 2 more fire stations would be necessary and possibly 1 more ladder truck. So if the current growth plans from here to roughly 2018, 2020 were to occur, if you have the tax base, go back over your shoulder and backfill 5 holes with additional stations. That's going to help everybody. The tide rises everywhere when you put more units on duty for those simultaneous calls and training, move, and cover events. And then work with the developers in a couple of key gap areas that as they really intensify land use and populations, you're looking at 2 more stations. Therefore, in summation, over the next 5 years, and even every time I type this, I need to say, well, it might be 5 years. And at the beginning of the recession, we kept bumping numbers out every 2 or 3 years, and now we're, year 4 or so into it. And growth is just now maybe coming back in a trickle. You'll need 7 additional fire stations, 2 to 3 more ladder trucks, and the 2 battalion chief field supervisors, which is just a geographic dispersion. You just don't have enough chiefs on duty, given the sheer size of the district, to give effective chief officer travel time coverage. And with that, the staff and I are here to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Excellent work as the previous efforts. Directors, comments, questions?
Madam Chair, I think the chief wanted to weigh in.
Thank you, Chief.
I'd just like to add a couple things. First off, I'd like to thank Stu for the work that he's done on behalf of the district over the last 5 years. His company that he's a principal in, Citygate and Associates, is a well-respected company in deployment models, and you've heard him talk about working with San Diego. He's worked with large cities and municipalities and moderate size and small ones all across the entire United States. We are one of those rare entities that has 5 years of data that he's worked with us on, that we are able to show the public exactly what's happening out there. And I think that a couple points that I want to make that are really important in the summation in the end. And that was, Mr. Gary talked about what's an additional 60 seconds to 90 seconds response time mean? Well, a building fire doubles in size every 60 seconds. So it's involved in a room and contents fire, and we take an extra 60 seconds to get there. It's now 2 rooms and contents. And that means, does it cut the escape pattern off or the escape route for those occupants that might be trapped in that building? That means when that fire doubles in size, the larger the fire, the more people power that we have to put on the scene, the more risk that we're putting the firefighters in to handle that incident. So that's a real impact when you look at 60 seconds or 90 seconds. Having a 31% deficiency is a huge impact as a fire chief that I look at, and I think that's an unacceptable consequence. But it's driven by the fact that we were 16 different districts that came together. We didn't start out as an organization, and the public needs to know that, with the ability to strategically, with scientific data, place every fire station where it needs to go. Now, each fire station is about $2.3 million a year to run, and that doesn't include the cost of construction or capital purchases of those engine companies. And what the public needs to know is that over the last several years, we have lost $26 million on an annualized basis of property tax. So only closing 6 companies, labor group stepping up with a $10 million in ongoing savings on a yearly basis. We are fighting to hold on to where we are at. And our call volume continues to increase. As of a month and a half ago, we were 2,000 runs ahead of where we were the same time last calendar year. So that is important. The other issue is that when we talk about wear and tear on equipment, a ladder truck is $750,000 to buy. So when you talk about Station 106 being strategically placed, and Mr. Gary is right on target there, having those stations placed next to each other is a benefit because they can cover in. The problem is that was a 2-company house. That was an engine company and a truck company. 2 different functions. So now what's happened is we need that truck in that area because it services the variety of stations around there. So now instead of running a $500,000 piece of equipment on all the medical calls and the call volume that we go on, we staff medics on every company in this district, unlike most entities. That truck company is running to pick up that call volume, and there's your wearing and tearing on that equipment. And so it's a priority to us to try to get relief into that area, even though it isn't strategically placed. And last but not least, when you talk about 60 to 90 seconds, I think people need to understand, and clearly the board of directors does, but more towards the public. If you're not breathing for 4 minutes, brain death starts. If you're not breathing for 5 or 6 minutes, you die. It's just the scientific facts that go with it. So not only are we short from the get-go on the resources that we need to adequately staff the district, we were short on those resources 5 years ago. So not only do we have the hill to climb of trying to figure out how we would best strategically move stations and build new stations, as Mr. Gary talked about, working with the developers and new development and doing it on a scientific-based deal. We're at the same time fighting the fact that another $4 million drop in property tax this year, the equivalent of 2 stations. I mean, at some point, there's got to be a solution there that has to come in on the revenue end. It just is a self-fulfilling prophecy that if we continue at that decline, and we're estimating another 2% drop next year, which would be a couple $1 million in property tax, that it's an issue that's destined for disaster. And there's nothing that this board or this staff can do except what we've been doing is trying to maximize every dollar the taxpayer gives us to provide the best level of service out there. So I think this really lays out scientifically for the community 5 years of data that shows exactly what's happening. This isn't us just pulling Johnny Carson's Carnac out of an envelope, and the answer is this is scientifically data-driven material that can give us that guidance that we need to move forward on into the future. And that concludes my remarks. I appreciate Mr. Gary's presentation tonight, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Chief. All right, comments, questions from fellow directors? Director Gould.
Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you, sir. I always appreciate when your organization comes. I truly appreciate the data-driven focus that you have. I think it was telling as you started tonight's comment to talk about the industry as a whole and how we look to standards that don't apply to Sacramento. They were built on a matrix that we really can't just fit. It's apples to oranges, but at least we're looking for standards to start a trend that we can look at as a community where many people just simply don't want to address it at all. This organization and your leadership allows us to at least look at something that's in the industry and say, how do we compare? I think that's important for the public to know, that the models that we're looking at were not developed for Sacramento County. They were developed at a national level for different kinds of geography that we simply don't have here. And we're trying our level best to make those numbers work. But at least it gives us some trends. I also think that, we haven't addressed the issue of mutual aid. Our numbers are driven down when we help our buddies. When we go into different communities that aren't within our jurisdiction and we save the life or we put out a fire, we're expending resources that don't come out of this organization's revenues necessarily. And we're doing that because that's the model that's been built in this community. And we're taking a hit for doing that. And it's important that the public, I think, understand that we're driving our response times down because we've got apparatus outside of our district boundaries, which is the right thing to do if your house is burning across the street and it just happens to be outside of our boundary. But the reality is it drives down our performances when we look against these standards. The other thing is there's a lot of times when our organization has no control over our apparatus. There's frequently times when our apparatus are held at bay because other organizations can't turn us around fast enough. And so our apparatus is stuck someplace, not able to respond to the next request for services. And that's a systems issue, but when people look at this and they say, you guys aren't, this is terrible. Wait a minute, it's much more deep and sophisticated than that. And we've got to take a look at that as a system and say, how can we change that behavior? And finally, calls are only going to continue to go up. It's the nature of our healthcare. It's the nature of our country. Maybe it's time this region look at some very creative ways to drive down the number of times our highest level of response has to go. Because there's lots of evidence that we're sending a great deal of equipment and very highly trained people to situations that maybe aren't required. So I think we've got to look at those kinds of things. But this is a wonderful tool to start that discussion. And I'm very thankful that you and your organization come here and we kind of say, what can we do to stay at the forefront? It's not very fun reading, unless you're a propeller head. But at least starts us in the right conversation, as you've so eloquently articulated tonight. I enjoy immensely when you're here. If you could come every 2 weeks, it'd be wonderful, but I'm sure you don't want to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Gould. Other comments, questions from fellow directors? Director Azali.
I'd just like to reiterate my appreciation for this. I'm very interested in the data and, in particular, having a way to present to the public the affect of the declining revenue. Even though we've done, I think, an exemplary job of maintaining standards, there is an effect, and the public should be aware of it.
One moment. Is there anyone else that was prepared? Okay.
I'm
Director
sorry.
Gould and then myself.
I'm sorry. I'm a little passionate about this, as you can tell. In fact, I think my pulse rate's up a little. Because I think arrival times and what we do, it's the essence of our business. It's why people call us. They want us to show up within a reasonable amount of time. At the end of the day, I think that's one of the key fundamental issues that this district has to deal with, and I'm excited that we're doing it. One issue in the executive summary, I sure wish that we would identify the concessions of our labor group. Because I think at the end of the day, when you look at the hole we're in, we would be in the Grand Canyon if that hadn't occurred. And the people need to hear that the men and women of this organization stepped up and did that to keep us in the position we are today. And while there's other strategies we've used, and you've identified those, I think one of them was the huge concessions that everyone in this organization took in order to continue doing more with less. And I think that just needs to be identified down the road.
Thank you, Director Gould. Yes, indeed, that's a whole other aspect, as the Chief has mentioned earlier tonight. Concessions, some of these station closures, efficiencies, it all is together in one package. What I would like to say, Mr. Gary and Chief, our fire chief, thank you very much for all of this work, because what we're doing here is we are able to do future planning. That's what this analysis and all these numbers help us do. And that's our job up here, is to plan for the future. And this type of information informs us on the directions that we need to do and our priorities. And for me, that is why this report is incredibly critical for my decision making, and I appreciate it very much. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gary. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our presentation reports. We'll move on to President's report. Under this topic, I'd like to say, as President of the Board, thank you very much for some of our for the work that the Metro Fire contributed to our community during EPI's Great Race. Our event was held last Saturday, and we had our CERT team, our community emergency response teams, in full bore with standby first aid throughout the event. And we had our boat operations, our swiftwater rescue crews out on the river in the Rapids area assisting kayakers. And to my knowledge, during the race, everything went smoothly. I did not hear of any critical incidences. And I want to give my personal thank you to the chief and to all the individuals from the Metro Fire family who contributed to a safe and successful EPI's Great Race for 2012. Fire Chief's report.
Well, I can say that the great people in the EPI's race treated the fire department with great dignity and respect. We didn't have rocks and bottles thrown at us like River Gone Wild. And I'm sure that Deputy Chief Holbrook will be addressing the issues of that, as well as the amount of resources that we've been spending across the northern half of the state, including our air assets, overhead, and strike teams. I'm sure he'll be briefing you on that. July 10th through the 13th was fire camp. Unfortunately, I was on vacation during that time. Poor planning on my part. That won't happen next year. But it was a huge success. And Brenda Briggs and Leonard deserve a lot of credit for the hard work that both of them do for fire camp. And I know that a variety of directors were out there. We had 80 kids attend fire camp. It's a really, really good program. I think we just hired somebody, if I remember right. We only have 650 employees, but we hired somebody that started in fire camp 20 years ago, and all of a sudden now they're working in the industry. But it's a key point to reach out to the community on a couple things. One is to introduce them to what we do, and that we are a viable career opportunity at Metro Fire. And number two, to really teach them the focus about safety. And I think this year one of the big issues was river safety and water safety, which unfortunately on the American River we've had some fatalities this year. And it's important to teach those kids that skill set at a young age to provide themselves and others the best safe environment that they can. July 12th and July 29th is the California State Fair, of course, and it's underway. This Saturday, July 28th, is the Firefighters Cook-Off, and that is going to be Tom Chin and Kevin Summers competing again against 4 other agencies, and we won that event last year. So I'm fully confident that they're going to get through Saturday, and then they'll have the final cook-off on Sunday. So I encourage everybody to go out there. It's a great time to go out there and support them. Also on that day, I believe at 1 o'clock out in Rio Linda, we have the Horseless Carriage Society that'll be out there, and please feel free to get out and enjoy that event. I'm sure Director Monk, that's out in his area, will be out there. I think Roberta McGlashan's going to be out there, and that should be a great event at 1 o'clock as well. Upcoming events, please save the following date, August 14th at 6 p.m. Rancho Cordova City Hall right here. We will be holding a promotional ceremony for several battalion chiefs, assistant chiefs, deputy chiefs on up the line. And so we encourage everybody to please come out for that. Also on 9/9 and 9/10 or 9/11 is the stair climb. On the 9th, 9/9 is the 9/11 stair climb and memorial run at 9:11 a.m. And so that would be September 9th. And they also have that memorial run walk. I think it's a 5K walk and run as well as a 10. I think I will stay in the 5K walk category this time. I'm not ready to move up to the 10. That was Thursday, halfway through the 5. So anyways, I encourage everybody to go out there. It's a great event to remember September 11th and what happened in the World Trade Center in New York City and the Pentagon and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and the tremendous sacrifice that the Americans on those planes, be they civilians or uniformed personnel that went to try to rescue them, in the end paid the ultimate price. I have no report on new hires, no reinstatements. Retirements, Chief Dwayne Aaron, retired, 27 years of service. We wish him the best. And of course, we welcome aboard Scott Cockrum as a Deputy Chief of Support Services, who you heard from tonight. As far as recruitment for firefighter paramedics, we had over 600 applicants invited to the written exam. 424 took the written exam. 236 were invited to oral interviews. 135 passed the orals and were put on the eligibility list. And 52 were invited back to a orientation, which I believe was held yesterday or today at our headquarters building out at Armstrong. I believe with that concludes my report, with the last exception. We will be doing a yearbook. Every 4 or 5 years, we did a yearbook on the department. I think going on with some of the director's points about high points and where we've changed, it would be an opportune time to do that construct again, and we will be providing that. Brenda Briggs will be heading it up with Captain Wooten, I think was, if I remember right, is the individual that helped out before, and we'd be looking for that to come out sometime in mid-2013. And that concludes my report.
And now we have a report from Operations Chief.
Hi, Christopher Holbrook, Deputy Chief of Operations, and I've actually, we're going to put up a PowerPoint tonight.
Thank you.
Today's presentation is all about what an all-hazard agency is, and we use that term on our side of the table a lot. I want you to appreciate what it means so that as you speak to folks in the community, there's something behind it. Last time that we addressed you, we talked about River Gone Wild and literally 5 cops and 4 firefighters fighting it out with 50 or 60 people armed with oars and who were tremendously inebriated. That is one glimpse at a multifaceted all-hazard agency. In addition to that, 4th of July was absolutely off the charts in terms of busy. Thank God we didn't have more loss at that time. In the last 14 days, though, since we've saw you, it's been more than a little interesting. I'll always tell you that what EMS and structure fires look like. Last time, we were running about 2 fires a day. That's double normal. Today, or the last 14 days, it was just about normal. 14 working structure fires, and thank goodness no loss of life there. Our transport rate is about the same as our partner. The 1% difference that you see really doesn't matter. What it is about trending. Long term, we always transport about the same, and that's important. You never want to see that degrade over time. If you do, there's probably something wrong. So with that, strike team and mutual aid. Who did we send out of town and why? The Robbers Fire, which was up here out of Forest Hill. We sent a strike team, 4156 Charlie, and the Charlie denotes a Type 3 strike team. A Type 3 strike team is the wildland engines, perfectly suited for that. In addition, we sent 3 overhead positions, and anybody who is sent to manage a component of the fire is lumped into something called overhead. So they could have been an operations section chief, a plan section chief, any one of a number of things that we contribute to the state of California in those times. The Mill Fire outside of Stony Ford, we sent 5 overhead, members of an incident management team that stayed there for a considerable amount of time, 10 days. And then the AEU Lightning Complex. Last week, for those of you who got a sudden windstorm in your backyard, happened to knock over umbrellas and those types of things, everything to the east of us got literally pounded by lightning. Unfortunately, that resulted in 17 fires in the country above Placerville and Shenandoah Valley. To that, we sent Copter 2. They worked 4 fires in one day. Absolutely amazing job. They were the only rotorcraft in Amador County. That is a problem. That is stating something. When we contribute that much to the protection of an entire county, because had those incidents got going, we'd still be there. That is hats off to our folks who contributed for that. In addition, we put up 4 overhead. And if you look at the next slide, please. What looks like a white area at the convergence of those roads is, and it may be blue on your map, the convergence of those 4 or 5 roads right there is Placerville. So you'll notice that everything was a little bit east and north-south of Placerville. You're talking about immense value at risk. This lightning storm came through, thank goodness, with precipitation, and most of these incidents were actually held very small. The next slide is actually to the south of Placerville. And what's even scarier about this is that that threatens all of the Shenandoah wine country. It was an unacceptable risk, and so we marched straight up there and put those out. So,
Here, here.
So, actually, on this set of fires, we deployed division supervisors and division trainees who literally coordinated the extinguishment of each one of these throughout the process. And we're very proud as an agency to be able to contribute to the statewide system in this manner at such a level. It's not a lot of agencies can pull that off. Next, please. Some of you may have seen on the news a relatively small in size but extremely fast-moving wildland incident that occurred in Slough House. Somebody was deconstructing a barn, happened to ignite that barn, and within minutes, 4 structures were burning. What wasn't told in the story is that the 5 structures that were right next to it, the only reason that those didn't burn as well, because our crews immediately deployed themselves between the burning structure and the non-burning and stopped the ember rain that was literally going from structure to structure. I will acknowledge and thank Consumnes and Wilton Fire for coming in at that time. Again, just out of the blue in the afternoon, no huge wind. It changed the complexity of the day. Unfortunately, we've had 2 river incidents in the last 2 weeks, in the last week actually. One resulted in a death from a young man who decided to swim across the river, to go and meet some women that were on the other side. And what an unfortunate event to occur for such a natural and simple act in our parkway. So we also had a rafter rescued that was pinned up against the Watt Avenue Bridge abutment. The force of the water, once you're in it and pins you up against something, is absolutely always going to win. You're talking about thousands of pounds, and no human could ever peel themselves off of something like that. So we need and have continued to do a media campaign about the danger of the river. Even today, what seems like midsummer, we're running fast and we're running cold. And unfortunately, we've far exceeded the number of deaths that we did last year. And the last item. On July the 24th, you talk about an all-hazard agency, and this ain't no bull.
Chris. Very good.
Way to go.
Very good.
Where'd it go? Oh, I had it on the other one. No, I don't know.
Okay, Ken will help us out here.
What you're about to see, and I want you to think about this for a minute. What looks like a very simple, straightforward lift of an animal. You've got a rodeo bull that is trained to be aggressive towards people in a well, which is a confined area. Somebody has to reach in and put straps around this bull to lift him out of this particular predicament. In addition, I've got a dozen people around him. I've got a heavy tow truck to lift him up with the engine at high RPM. There is no chance in the world that this was a safe or unrisky operation. As a matter of fact, you will notice when they lift him out, every rescuer on scene scatters like the wind. So it was, within the 8 seconds. Yeah, exactly.
Good.
So,
Director.
The only reason that I actually bring this to you today was, while it's a great story, it actually got more press in Los Angeles than the riot in Anaheim. That tells you how the people feel about animals. It is absolutely just one more glimpse of what your all-hazard agency brings to the table every day for this community. And with that, the video will end. I will conclude my report. Do you have any questions?
I'd just like to add one more thing that I think is important. You know, Secopter 2 is involved in a lot of incidents, both in our county as well as out of our county. One thing I wanted to mention is that Captain Mike Lozano to show you how much credibility the air program has at Metro Fire, and Mr. Lozano, he was specifically requested. He flew as a helicopter manager on the Blackhawks, the National Guard copters on the Robbers Fire. Was assigned to one of those copters, and he basically was in charge of the fire attack, talking to Airco and directing the pilot on where they needed to come in and make their drops. Flew for 7.5 hours. 44 sorties going into those steep canyons and everything. And, that tells you that this agency is really starting to progress when your regional partners at Cal EMA and CAL FIRE go, hey, we want to bring their people in, not just for these overhead management positions, which is a specialty, but for something critical sensitive as that, as helping the National Guard in those Blackhawks to do that mission up there in the Robbers Fire. So, I just thought I would add that to it. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments for? Okay, thank you, Chief. General Counsel's report?
No report.
SAC Metro Fire District 522 representatives? The podium, Representative Hickman.
Good evening, President Jones, the rest of the board, and Chief Hinkie. The rest of the guys are back in Philadelphia. We've got our annual convention, or biannual convention, so I'll be giving the report tonight. The Chief mentioned 9/11. I'd like to reiterate the locals' participation in that, and also the Metro Firefighters Association that's helping put that on, and the Widows and Orphans Fund. The run is on 9/9, September 9th, and that is the 5K run and also a 10K run. On the 11th is the stair climb, which the firefighters only can participate in. 343 firefighters will be carrying names of the deceased firefighters from 9/11 of 2001. So that's just firefighters only, but we'll have some fire apparatus down there, which the district's helping provide. And I also hope other people can come out and see that, and at least be down there at the ground floor when we come on out for that. I'd like to thank Chief Holbrook. He included 522 in the discussions on the standards of cover, of which you guys received your presentation tonight. This is, I think, the first time we've had that, and including all levels of this agency, from the recommendations of the fire chief and his command staff all the way down to the men and women that staff those fire engines, helping come up with the decisions that are going to affect this agency as we move forward. We've been included in every meeting we've had that led up to the report that you guys got today. So I'd like to thank the administration for that opportunity. Thanks to the local members that participate in fire camp. It's always a big success. Don't need to beat that one any further, but it's just an amazing thing that we get to do that every year. So appreciate that to our members that volunteered their time. Any of the firefighters out there, it was a volunteer basis. There's no cost that the district's incurring on the labor cost for all the firefighters. That's all 100% volunteer. And a special encouragement and thank you to the new firefighters that we've hired. We've had a total of 3 classes now in the last 12 months of brand new firefighters, and there was a very large participation of those firefighters to help create a good practice over the years to be involved at the whole time. We really appreciate that. You got a report, obviously, and you guys approved the final budget. It's been an ongoing thing also for us firefighters. And I'd like to give credit to the fire chief and to the board also for recognizing and remembering the sacrifices that our members have made. It's been very, very difficult, but very necessary to keep this district afloat, to make sure that the budget is balanced on a year-to-year basis. And it's very good to know that we're going into 2012, 2013 with a balanced budget. And, it's difficult for the sacrifices that we've made and all employees of Metro Fire have made, but it's also necessary that we've done so. And we appreciate the fact that you guys remember that and that you're making it known that the public understands that too. And it's not at an end, but we know it's there. So once again, thank you for recognizing that. We're proud to do our part. It's hard to do our part, but keeping this district as a viable, strong district is important to us also. Like to let it be known to the board that the administration has asked us to come and meet and have some discussions regarding our closed contract. It's good through the end of 2013. So sometime in August and September, around there, we're going to actually start having some discussions in anticipation of the end of the contract 2013 to see what we need to do to help things move forward in the future. Shout out to the administration, the cost recovery, and the additional revenue sources that you guys have all participated in fighting for has helped us help you guys. So we anticipate some good communication, and hopefully we'll have some good work coming forward. And just in closing, like to congratulate recent promoted from our ranks. Captain Mo Johnson promoted to battalion chief. We had a couple of captain promotions and the final engineer promotion. So that's good to see all of that happening. And unless you have any questions for me, that closes my report. All right,
thanks. Mr. Hickman. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to committee and delegate reports. The executive committee has not met and no meetings are scheduled. Item 2, Communications Center, JPA, Chief Cockrum. Okay, we do have a Communications Center, JPA, and we invite Chief Cockrum to the podium to give us a report.
I apologize for that. Since the last time we came up and talked to you about that, we've had 2 personnel meetings. On both meetings, we basically provided direction to council, and no further action was taken on that. Our next meeting, regular scheduled meeting, is Tuesday. That's all.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Item 3, California Fire and Rescue Training, JPA, Director Kelly.
The next meeting of the JPA is scheduled for the 12th of September.
Item 4, Finance Committee, Director Monk.
I'll kick that back to you. I was not at the last meeting because of work-related issues, so.
Well, that's fine. We did report out at that time, and the only new item is a reminder that August 9th at 5 p.m. is the next Finance Committee. Item number 5, Policy Committee, Director Orzali.
Okay, we'll figure this out. The Policy Committee met this evening and determined that due to the work that's been done, the Policy Committee will now meet on an as-needed basis. That will come as a date to be announced through the board clerk, and I congratulate everybody on the work that's been done so far. Thank you.
We're going to move on to board members' questions and comments at this time, and after that presentation, we will adjourn to a closed session to cover our remaining items as listed on the agenda item. So we'll begin over to my left, and I'll ask Director Clark for his board comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the Finance Department for a fine job on the final budget. Thanks to Rhonda McFarland and her crew for doing an excellent job. I also want to congratulate Dwayne Aarons, Chief Aarons, on his retirement. I want to thank the volunteers for fire camp. I went out there the last day. I wish I had more time to volunteer. I'm going to try to improve that in future. But the kids were having a great time out there, and I think it's a wonderful thing that we do at Metro every year. And in general, I want to thank all the men and women of this organization, this family, that do such a wonderful job out there performing and protecting the public in our jurisdiction and other places. I just can't say enough about the professionalism and just a great job that people do day in and day out. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Director Scheidegger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too want to make a comment about fire camp, and I don't want to go over the same stuff, but I was at a recent community event, and 3 families came up to me and talked about what a wonderful event it was for kids that were involved with them, either their own kids or others. And it's just great to be out in the community and see that response and the long-term benefit. I'd also like to congratulate retired Deputy Chief Aaron, new Deputy Chief Cockrum, Battalion Chief Mo Johnson, and the other promotees. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to see these people ascend and move on. And then I also want to come back to something that Chief Holbrook talked about in his report and the River Rage event. Many, many years ago in my career, I was involved in a similar situation, and you talk about our firefighters back-to-back with law enforcement. And if you've never been in a situation like that, it's indescribable. Our people don't get paid enough, and it's just another example of the true heroes and heroines that we have in our department. They're out there protecting lives, doing their job, and they are not supposed to be in a position like that. So I think this community really needs to understand and appreciate the valor that was demonstrated by our people once again in that event. Thank you for the report, Chief. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Director Scheidegger. Director Newcomer?
I invited Director Scheidegger to join me the other day. We donated some turnouts that the fire district made available to the Rotary Club of Citrus Heights to be shipped down to Columbia. That went rather well. I neglected to do my homework and contact Directors Gould and Rosali to invite them, but tonight they seem to be okay with that omission on my part. So I too would like to thank our CFO McFarland and her staff for the final budget that's been presented. And I would like to thank our labor groups and our administration for the continued cooperation and the joint work they do to get us through day to day, as well as what we see coming with possibly more reductions of revenue in the future. So thank you.
Director Monk?
I'd like to join the other directors in congratulating the retirees. Dwayne's been looking for his retirement for quite a while and has been very gracious in staying with us as long as he did to help us move forward. I want to thank the chief again and Ms. McFarland for the work that they're doing on the budget. Just excellent information that helps us, again, planning for the future and giving us those numbers and resources that we need to make our predictions on how we're going to do. And with the cooperation of 522 and the other labor groups in the concessions, we have been one of the better districts in maintaining where we are without having to make severe cuts. So it does take the cooperative effort of all people involved to keep us where we are. And I just want to say we appreciate all that. One final thing is out in Relinda on Saturday at 1 o'clock, all the directors are invited to come out to the Horseless Carriage Club's meeting out there. The supervisor will be out there with us. Doug Ossie, former congressman, will be out there. And it's all showing the support with the fire district, the park district, and the community out there in Old Station 111. And with the other community groups, I keep pushing that common theme and working for the park district and the county and us, all working together for common goals. And it's a very attractive movement that we've got going out there, and a lot of attention's being drawn to it. So each of the directors is welcome to come out and spend a little time with us and look at the old cars and come out to the old fire station. That's it.
Thank you, Director Monk. Director Gould?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to thank Mr. Gary and city staff, Citygate and their staff for coming out and presenting to us some very valuable information, and kudos to the team that they're working with at this organization. I think it's, again, like I said, the essence and kind of the core of what we do is to figure out how to provide our resources to the community in the most efficient and cost-effective way. And I'm excited to see this dialogue begin and will continue, I'm sure. I'd like to thank all the staff that participate in the budget, and I know there's lots of people who do, particularly our division heads. they're asked to come in within a certain amount of budget, and they have to make some difficult decisions about where to allocate that. And I appreciate their efforts as they funnel that forward to the chief and the other staff members. I'd also like to point out that tonight we heard some testimony about the transparency of the process that's happening here at Metro Fire. And I've been around a little bit of time and know when there were some days where that happened not at all. And this organization spent a lot of time and wasted energy just simply trying to get to that point. And today, because it's there and happening very frequently, we're able to turn our efforts and our vision to things like the single role paramedic, how to work with statewide agencies and be at the forefront of those technologies, how to look at providing these services in a different way, because we don't have to spend all this time trying to be transparent. It's happening every day, and I think we heard a lot of testimony, and that's exciting from this end of the table, where we no longer have to put a lot of energy and effort and direction in that regard. And thank you for all of you that are participating in that, because it's really organizationally wide, and it certainly starts at our CEO, who was hired to do that and has done a very good job of making that happen in a very short amount of time. And finally, thanks to all the retirees. I know Dwayne and Tim and others. Every time we thank them, I think it really kind of goes unnoticed that what we're really doing is recognizing that decades and decades of institutional knowledge is really going out the door. I think we should really just not be happy with that. No, stick around until the new guys figure it out. But the reality is these men and women do a fantastic job, and when they leave, rightfully so, we lose a tremendous amount of knowledge. And I think we're doing a good job of making sure that before they leave, there's some succession. And that's been lacking on occasion as well. So I think we're really doing well. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Director Gould. Director Kelly?
This evening's presentation by Citygate, Mr. Geary, was a reminder of why I was so impressed the first time that those folks appeared before this board and the information that they've given us. With the station closures that have taken place in this district, it's very valuable to see the data of how it's affected things. It's very valuable to see how the people that manage this district utilize that information to make decisions on other delivery of service changes that may need to be made. But again, it was a pleasure to hear him. Fire camp was mentioned. I see a camp counselor in the back, and it was a pleasure hanging out with you for the couple of days that I got to hang out. Not enough can be said, Brenda, for the wonderful program that you put together. And I think, just an example of shining stars in our organization. Certainly, we see them with the management staff here on a daily basis, or at least every couple of weeks when we're here. And I think it's important to point out Captain Law in the back of the room. I think she is a shining star, an example of what's wonderful about our organization. Rhonda McFarland, you've done things for this organization, got it into a position to where it can manage the finances in a way that has never been done in the years that I've been at this district. And seeing the way the budget was presented this year, seeing our final budget, it's a pleasure to see things presented in clear and concise manners. And I know it's largely due in part to your efforts, but the vision of everybody else that got you here and everything is much appreciated. It's a pleasure, and certainly being part of fire camp and spending some time out there, it was yet another reminder of why it's so wonderful and you can take so much pride in being a part of this organization. And I realize that I'm a small part compared to the people that are working on a daily basis. But it's a pleasure to get to hang out with you folks.
Thank you, Director Kelly. Director Ozali?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to just very briefly congratulate the retirees and congratulate the promotees. Both of them are very well deserved. I had the opportunity to go out and visit fire camp, and Brenda, you do a fantastic job, except for the part where you threatened to throw water on me. We've got to work on that. The City Gate folks, I can't say enough about the presentation. It was very informative and enormously useful for us. And with that, I'll close. Thank you.
I, too, would like to offer well-deserved congratulations to Dwayne and Tim on their retirement, all of the newly appointed and promoted members of the Metro family. Thank you. What I liked about, I wanted to combine for the public to take a look at both the Citygate report and the PowerPoint that Deputy Chief Holbrook presented. Those two reports presented tonight give a very, very good example and encapsulation of what the fire service does. And a lot of times the breadth and the depth of what our responses are and what we really do on a 24/7 basis is lost. If you dial 911, we show up. And that includes this entire gamut of a stub toe to life-saving rescue, whether it's animal or people. We're involved at so many different levels, and that's what we do. And I really, really appreciate these reports because it helps to give everyone a picture into what it means to be in the fire service emergency response business. Thank you very much on that. That lends itself to the summations line, is that it's a cooperation and professional efforts of every member of the Metro organization that contribute to the success of these responses to emergency calls. Thank you very much. That concludes board member questions and comments, and at this time we will recess to close session. Are there any comments from senior staff before we recess to close session?
I think we're going to handle the litigation issues first and then go into the personnel issue.
Yes,
that way
sir.
we can kick people loose.
Right. We will take item number 2, conference with legal counsel first, and then item number 1, personnel matter, will be addressed second. And I believe counsel is going to say a few words before, within closed session? Okay, thank you. Closed. 5 minutes? Yes.